everyone. This is Monty Dravenstead from MonsterArts.com, and welcome to our very first video tutorial, and what I hope to be is a long series of tutorials documenting creating a game in Blender and Unity. Both Blender and Unity, at least part of Unity, is available for free. So hopefully you'll be able to follow along and work with the files that I do give you, and we'll start right there. This first tutorial is going to be available for free along with all of the files, but in the future there's a membership to our site, and while the videos will always be free and available, the files and also a PDF which should have settings or screenshots of parts of what we're working on that are often hard to follow on the videos. For instance, node layouts for your textures, or settings in Unity or settings in Blender or some other program we'll be using, and you'll be able to see those better. So those PDF and videos will be available. It's very inexpensive, just $8 a month, and less if you choose a longer series. But enough with the promotion there. Let's get into what we're doing. So Memoir is our what I've come up with, the name, at least the working title for the game that we're working on. It's going to be an RPG game, and we're going to go from start to finish as long as I can. Who knows how long these series will take. We'll just keep working it together and putting something together. It should include a third person format. It should have some enemies to defeat, puzzles, quests, all the way through to the end of the game, which basically I'm putting this on kind of a something I'm passionate about, which is freedom and individuality and things like that. But basically the game is that there's a group of people who are trying to take over and make everybody else live the way they think they should live instead of letting the people live, and your job is to put down what I'm calling the cabal. We'll flesh out all of that as we go along. There's so much to put together and understand when you're building a game that it's almost impossible for me to sit and go through all of it. But just to give you a quick hint here, we're going to take a look. There's Unity. Let's drop that down and start with, let's take a look at how I've set up my whoops, that's not what we're looking for. Here's what we're looking for. I have set up a set of folders. One basically with my Blender files, the documents, any reference we're going to need to put in, and the textures. And the textures should match each one of our Blender files. So here's the one for the first tutorial, and we'll put it in there and follow along with what's going on there. I'll provide what I can. Some of the reference and some of the textures may or may not be, depending on the licenses, but we'll go through and look at how we can do that. Some of them will be painted, some of them will be photos, some of them will be done in Unity. It'll just depend on what we're working on. And by the way, this is more of a, in my opinion, a steampunk, or what I'm calling Tesla punk world, in which there is free electricity and lighter than air travel is what we're going to go through, but you'll see that as time goes on. And in the other folder is all about Unity and how it's set up, and we'll get into that a little later as we go in. So the beginning of what we should look at is here. It's my site where you'll be able to find all of my work and eventually these files and tutorials, and keep coming back. And you can register for free content. Just join to know when new stuff comes out. There's some pre-downloads on there, and also then the Monster Club here if you want to join and get all of the details. So the programs we're going to be using for this video. We're going to start here with Blender. That's going to be our main 3D application, and it should be able to handle whatever we need to do on that end. You can download it from here. I'm going to be using a development version, at least as of this time, of 2.64. 2.63 should have most of what we're doing without any problem there. So Unity is also free. There is a Unity free version and a Unity Pro version. For what we're doing, there should be no need to get into the Pro version to begin with. All of dropping in our assets and working on, which is where we're going to start, should be just fine. I'm going to be using Photoshop. However, GIMP is available to be able to do your painting and your textures in. Crazy Bump will help us develop some of the normal maps that we'll need along the line. And I know I'm jumping forward, but might as well let you go. For the Mac, which is what I'm on, you can download a test version that is free. There's also a free version for Windows. There are quite a few other solutions for this, but this is what I'm going to be using. When we get into the characters, you can go ahead and download this free software from Daz, which will help us design our characters, and then we'll use those designs and create a low enough poly version and for our game. If you do not want to use that, you can go with this completely open source version, Make Human, and the same principles should apply. Just some of the things about importing it might be different, but I will probably be using Daz Studio. So let's go ahead and just close that and get out of there. So that sets us all the way up to what we're going to actually look at and see how far we can get in today. By the way, if you're not familiar with Blender, go over to Blender Cookie or Blender Guru. Both of them are spelled the way they sound, and there's some great, especially on Blender Cookie, there's some great starting tutorials, and I will try to follow along as best I can, telling you each thing that I'm doing. I'm going to set up our little screencasts here. These keys will show what I'm pressing, so they're showing the pressing of the button, and should I be pressing any keys, they show up over here so that you can follow along. The first thing that you need to do when we start talking about building assets for a game is actually figure out what do you need to build for it to drop into the game right. So I did a bunch of testing and to go through, and here's what we have between Unity and Blender. Unity uses its default drop-in cube is 1 meter by 1 meter. In Blender, if we go ahead and hit Shift A and add in a cube, whoops, let's just delete that. Whoops, let's just delete that, and let's set our cursor to the center and do that again. Anyways, to drop in a cube, this is actually, if you take a look over on the side, transformation, and you can see the dimensions here, or I'm hovering over with the mouse, and it is 2 by 2 by 2, but it is 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters, which at least means that when you're working in Blender, we're going to work in meters, so that at least conceptually we're in the same. We will have to do some stuff with our FBX, which is the format we're going to use for exporting. But when we use FBX, we're going to have to do some scaling and possibly fix some things in Unity just to make sure everything's right. But at least the scale is actually 1-to-1 when you're building what we're going to be building. Excuse me, needed a drink there. All right, so what we want to test first of all is that whatever we build is actually going to work with a character inside. What I mean by that is if we build a building and we want them to go through a door, we have to make sure that the doors are the right size for the character to fit through, both width and height. Fortunately, Unity provides a third-person character that we'll probably be modifying over the time, but something that we can start right away and test with and make sure that the size is the same. So as long as we build our character the same size as what Unity is using, which would only make sense, then we should be just fine. All right. So here we have a 2 by 2 cube. The other thing that we want to look at is that when we build something into Unity and using FBX, the origin needs to be in the center. No matter where you put your model, Unity is going to see its origin, which is your scale point and your rotation point, as the origin of the modeling program you sent it out of. Whether that's Maya or whether that's Blender, it's the origin point that matters. So we want to make sure that the origin point is either in the center, where we want to drop the piece in, or perhaps in the case of maybe if we're going to put some stairs in and we want them to be perfectly aligned, then we want the origin to be in the center of the room so that the stairs drop in right where they're supposed to be. But that's the basics of what we're going to do. So here in Blender, what we're going to do with the cube to start with is we're going to make our first room 10 meters by 10 meters by 3 meters. So this is going to give us plenty of room to play around in. And then what we're going to want to do is move up on the Z scale 1.5 meters to drop that right on the floor, just like that. That's how we want to do that. And then we're going to hit tab and move into edit mode. And what this does, this is where we can actually change the model inside of Blender. And if we hit control tab, we can see we have vertex, edge, and face. And so we're going to go over to face, and we're going to take the roof, and we're just going to hit X and delete that face, because we're going to build the roof and the floor separate, but for the time being we want to be able to see. And one of the things, the third person controller is not perfect, so we want to be able to see because it doesn't follow the character perfectly, and we'll be modifying that and adjusting it and finding scripts to make that work. But this is where we're going to start with. Excuse me. The second thing that we're going to do is actually take the floor, and we're going to hit in Blender P, which allows us to separate the floor. So we have the floor now as a separate object. You see, we can't, it's not part of anything we can select here because we're still in edit mode, so we can only select the walls. Alright, so if we tab back into the mode, we now see over here we have our cube, which is our walls. So let's go ahead and name that. And if you hover over what you're trying to name and hit control and click, it will open that up for you to be able to type that in. And we're just going to call that walls. And then we're going to take the other one and we're going to call that floor. Alright, so the floor is really not of a concern for a little while. What we're going to do is work on the walls. So we'll select the walls and go ahead back into edit mode. And what we need to do is give the walls some thickness. Now, you might think it's just as easy just to leave them. They're just walls. You only need to see one side, at least the way we're going to build it, which I'll explain here. But most game engines do not like planes. They are difficult when you come around the corners, what they should and shouldn't show, because if you're looking, for instance, if you hit one and go straight in, you can't see that wall. And you're trying to look at that, even if you go into where we're able to see all the way through, you can't, it doesn't know as a camera, there's no thickness as far as the camera is concerned to that wall, so it doesn't know what to show. Now, as long as you're on the outside, that's fine, but if you go through a door and look, you wouldn't be able to see it. And so it's just a good practice for us to go ahead and put in walls. Now, the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to build, which won't seem important here, but we're going to actually build outside walls with a thickness and inside walls with a thickness, and then put them through. And the reason for that is one, texturing, so we're not trying to figure out which part of the wall on one side is outside and one side is inside. So there's a big issue with texturing it. And there's an issue if you actually have more than one room, which part of the walls are going to fit this and which are going to fit that. And the way we're going to work with it is we're going to build the outside walls, then we'll drop in any of the inside walls, and anything in between. When we cut open a doorway, I'm not sure how else to explain this, but you'll see as we go along, we'll put the actual molding on a doorway, even if that's just a simple cube. And by doing that, we'll hide any of the inside. We'll only have to render or texture the walls that are being seen. The rest can be there, but the camera doesn't have any problem dealing with the planes then when we do that. And we'll also be able to swap them in and out, change whatever we want without worrying about changing one wall and then what that does to another wall. We'll be only dealing with exactly what you're looking at, and that just has seemed to be a good practice to for me that has worked in what I've been doing. So we have our wall here, And in this particular situation, we're just going to add one door, and we're going to slap it right in the middle of the front here. So in Blender, if you hit Control R and hover over one of the sides, you'll see these purple lines. These are the line cuts. And if you scroll on your mouse wheel back and forth, you can get a number of cuts. And what we want is just two simple cuts. Then hit the accept button, which, by the way, Blender starts out with and that worked on the wrong wall. Gotta be careful of that. So we're going to go back into the shaded mode so you can't do it. Blender uses the right click button as its selection tool from the beginning. I have changed that in my version to use left click the way most other programs do. You can get through that, and you can see how to do that over here in the user preferences, and right in the beginning in the interface, no, input. I'm sorry, it will tell you which one you want to select with. Okay, and a bunch of other settings. If you're using a laptop, to go ahead and emulate the number pad, because the laptop's what I'm running on, basically with a larger screen and all that kind of stuff. If you have any questions, you'll be able to put in comments and questions, and I will follow as best I can with base. Hit Control R and get it in the right spot. Give it two cuts, and hit left click to put the cuts in, and then right click to solidify those cuts in. And actually, before we do that, we should probably give it some thickness. So I'm going to go back in here, and selecting A, we're going to select everything and go to Control F, and we want to solidify. It's not, they changed something in this new, the inset faces. That's what we want to look at here. And we'll look over here on the outside, and if we take the thickness, should be able to see. Actually, that's not what we want to do. We want to extrude these, and we're going to immediately left click to stop the extrude. Use Alt S to scale it in. That's better. I lost myself there for a little bit. And we'll go ahead and just scale it into about there. Now, by hitting Alt S, what we did do is it's going to scale in all directions. So what we want to do now is select, go over into vertex mode, and using the B key, you can select all these on the top. And what we're going to do is hit S to scale them in the Z direction. So hit Z and then hit 0, and that will make sure that they're all straight. And then we're going to do the same thing with the bottom set. So B, crossed, S, Z, 0. Whoops, because I had all of them selected. I didn't want that. I just want the bottom ones. You need to unselect those using A to get that done. And scale Z, 0. Done. And I apologize. I know I'm making mistakes. This is my first video ever of this kind, so I'm sure that not everything's going to go real well the first times, and I will get better, but I'm hoping you're learning something from what we're doing. So again, we're going to unselect that, and I'm going to tab out, because this method of trying to get a space in here can be really tricky. And what I think might be easier is if we go ahead and select, and we're going to just put in a cube. And what we want is 6 inches. Being an American, I'm done with inches, and we're going to make our walls about a foot thick, but we're talking meters here, which is 3, so that should make it fine. So what we want in the walls is 6 inches, and I know I had that written down, and I guess I don't have that set. So what we need to do is figure out what the number is for the 6 inches, and I am doing that as we speak. And then what we'll be able to do is the inside walls for this particular building is probably only going to have one wall, so we might just leave it the way it is, in that it will be one huge, not huge, but one building. And we're going to go, one building with no rooms in it. And so 6 inches is 0.1524 meters. So we're going to go 0.1524, in the X and 0.1254 in the Y, except it's not doing it. 0.152 because it's only accepting 3, and we'll leave it at the 2 meters. And if you hit 7, and 7 will take you to the orthographic top view, and G to move the item, we'll take it right down to our wall and use the scroll button to bring it in, and we're going to try to get it absolutely as close. And what we can do actually is if we put this back to where we had it from and go down to this little button here where it says snap during transformation, and we're going to leave it snapped to the increments, meaning it's going to snap to the grid sizes, and we grab G and bring it down, we should get right there to the edge of the grid. And why is it not doing that? We should snap it. So we'll rotate in G again, and we'll get it snapped to the 0 and right to the edge there. So this is the thickness that our wall needs to be. So we're going to go ahead and select our building here and hit Tab and use A to deselect everything. And what we want to do is select what is going. Oh, I have the floor selected. That's what I want right here. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and go into edge mode and then use Control E and edge loop, and it should take that whole inside, and then shift select the bottom one, and again Control E and edge loop, and go to our top view and get right down in here to where our box is, and again hit Alt S, and whoops, we want to turn this snapping off for now so that it will actually move, and again Alt S should bring it right back out, and we'll just snap it right with that box. Okay, and then we want to make sure and be using 1 to go to the front view, and see how these came down like that. So there's a couple things we can do. I think we should be able to just snap them by going G to move it in the Z direction, and having turned back on the snapping, we should be able to snap that right back in. And then I'm going to use my box select, but use the middle mouse, and that will deselect everything. And take this one, and again G, and straight down to Z, and snap it right in. So now we have our walls, and we'll go out, and this little piece is going to become our collision later, so we'll just set it over there aside, and we'll get to collisions in a little while. Alright, so here is our set of walls, and nice and straight, easy. We'll go into 1, and now we're going to go back to where I started to go too fast before, and again tab into edit mode, except we need to select the right thing. Select, go to Control R to put our things in, and we'll put in 2 and click and hold them right there. Alright, so again we do have this issue here with them being not straight, so what we're going to do is go into vertex mode. Just seems to be the easiest, and first we're going to deselect everything, select these, and again we're going to scale these on the x-axis to 0. So if you hit S, X, and 0, that'll flatten that one out, and A to deselect, B to select them all, S, X, and 0, and do that. So what we're going to try here is a 1 meter door. So a 1 meter will be 1/2 of a meter on either side. What should work here is if we take this and go up to our transform, and on the x-axis we should be right at 0.5, and that one's at negative, so we need to go negative 0.5, and nope, that was the wrong one. On the x-axis that is positive, so 0.5, and no, that is not working correctly. So we need to G, X, and we have this on the snapping, and sometimes what you need to do is get in close enough, and you will notice that more boxes show up each time. And also if we look here, I'm not sure why that's not, oh, that's on local mode. That should probably fix it. Now let's go ahead and try 0.5, and Bam, right there we go. My fault. All right, and again, A, B will do the same thing, and this one will be negative 0.5. Bam, we have the door. Except we need a height. So again, we'll hit 1, go to this, to the front perspective view, Control R, and put another thing in. And this one, I do have written down, this one we want to be 2.133 meters high, which is basically 7 feet. So 2.133, boom, there we have our door. All right, so now we're going to switch back over into face mode and grab door there. Whoops, that one didn't go all the way through. Okay, so what we need to do, and I should know that, it wouldn't have gone all the way through. We need to put one on the inside. So we'll go Control R and escape because we need to get out to where we can get at one of the edges and put that line in and hold that line. So again, to put the line in, and then if you hit the left mouse button, then you can go up and down with the line, and if you immediately hit the right mouse button, it will put it in exactly the center between the two points that you placed it in. And then again, we can take this and go right up here to be perfectly accurate, 2.133, and we now have that cut in there. And again, go back into face mode and take the two faces and hit X and delete the faces. Alright, now we're going to go back into, we can do this in edge mode or vertex mode, but edge mode seems to be easier. And we grab this edge and each of the edge, and if you hit F, it will make a face right in those edges. And again, face and face. And we're going to go back into face mode because I noticed that we still have this face here, and we want to get rid of that because the floor will be doing that. So again, X and faces. So now if we take a look, we have our basic set for our, this is actually going to be a general store, but we have that set right where we want it. And this is as complicated as a building has to be. You can make them as complicated or not. But the other advantage by building it this way is when you're in a game engine, the camera is just going to look at what it can see, and the least amount of polys it can see is great. So let's just imagine here, there's only a total of 36 polys to see all the way around. If we then, you'll see a little bit in the door, but only this little bit of the new wall will be seen, which is probably going to be 1 poly, 2 polys, depending, depending on where the cut line is when we put the new one in. And then all of a sudden, when we go through this door, bam! Now we see the inside. Well, if we would have the way I'm describing this, the walls of the inside rooms separate, and let's say we put a wall, right here. Whoops, I actually want to grab right here and right here. Then when we walked in, we'd only see these two walls, and this is all a separate object, and it shouldn't be then drawn by the game engine, only what it can see. Whereas if we went through and cut in all of the different walls by doing the same method we did to cut in the doors, and we cut in a wall here, and we cut in a wall here, and we do this, that's all one object and needs to be drawn whenever the camera looks at it. And we end up, even though we might have more polys in the long run because we're doubling up on the walls, the camera's only looking at certain ones. The moment it walks through here, it only has to render the room, not any of the outside walls. I hope that all makes sense as to where we're going. So right now we're at about 28 minutes, which is probably enough. You listen to me prattle for a while, and we have a simple form of our building. And in order to make the building really work, we still need to finish the floor, and we need to put in our collision meshes, and we'll talk about that next time. So I hope you're enjoying what I'm doing, and maybe I'll make the first set of these free just to let you all get going on them. We'll see how that goes along. But have a great day. I hope that this is going to be helpful and that we have a learning experience and can develop a little bit of a community and maybe put something together and see where we go from there. But thank you and enjoy. Have a great day. Bye-bye.